a couple other things that we do know, right? Like, because a lot of times when I'm teaching people self-hypnosis, they'll ask me, "Well, how do I know I was in the hypnotic state? What cues can I know?" Right? Because when you're working with a hypnotherapist, it's quite easy. I can tell you, I saw your breathing patterns change. I saw your eye movement. Your body was talking. I noticed all these different things, but it's harder to notice that when you're doing it yourself, or maybe you're not going to trust it. So again, what we want to remember is that in the hypnotic state, you're going to feel very focused and absorbed, right? It's not that you're not going to have a rogue thought, right? So think of it this way: when we're in the awake, conscious state, we take in a lot of information, right? We can take in a lot of, I can notice all these things around me. I notice the sounds, I notice the cars, whatever it might be, wherever I am. But as we begin to get absorbed into our relaxation or absorbed into the experience that we're having, the mind begins to focus in, right? It's kind of like reading a book. Let's use that analogy. When you're reading a book, at first you're looking at every single word, right? And then those words each flow together into sentences, and the sentence then becomes something else, and you keep going onward. Now, you might notice as you begin to get into a book, your reading becomes automatic. You're not thinking about every single word, and your eyes are just scanning the page. It's doing what it naturally knows how to do. And so you're becoming absorbed and allowing your subconscious to take over. The interesting thing that happens next is that the words that you're reading, right, and the sentences really that you're reading become visuals. Whatever the book is talking about or describing, you begin to visualize it or imagine it, or quite possibly you begin to feel it, right? I know when I read a book, like there are times when I get really agitated or really excited or really sad or really, envious. There are all these emotions that come up. Those emotions aren't there, they're being described. And so that is the hypnotic state. Again, you become absorbed in the book. You're not worrying about all the different sounds, things that are happening. And it's not that you don't hear them, right? They are happening around you. They're just not triggering you to need your attention because you're hyper focused here and you're absorbed in the book. And so it is that deep state of awareness of where you're placing your awareness, though, because if you wanted to place your awareness on the room around you, you certainly could. Or maybe your dog's going to bark, or you're going to hear your child screaming, or you hear a crash out the window. Again, you're going to be drawn out of that focus state to another state. Um, there is, as you'll notice, again, similar to the book is a perfect example. When we get into that hypnotic state, you're going to notice a reduction in chatter. And that is because when you're kicking into the subconscious mind, that logical part that likes to chatter away, that inner critic is much quieter. And it's the part of you, you might hear it kicking, going, "Am I doing this right? Oh my gosh, I'm worried." But allow those thoughts to come in. Again, it's not about pushing them away, it's about having them there and then just refocusing the mind back into the mission and the intention of what it is that you're doing. So if the intention is relaxation in the body through a technique that I'm going to teach you, that's where you want to focus your mind, right? And then you're also going to notice a distance. This is an interesting one because there is a little bit of a distance. It's like the things that might have triggered you once, they just don't have the heat that they usually do, or the spiciness. So if you were visualizing a past memory, there's usually like a different experience that you're going to have toward it or feeling versus the fear, the anger, upset, or maybe it's going to feel a little bit lighter. Um, they just feel less urgent, I guess is the best way to put it. So that's sort of what you're going to notice. And again, give yourself time. It does not happen. For some people, it happens all at once. And some days it might be like that for you. But there are other days where it's just going to be a gentle movement into it, into the hypnotic states. Um, the physical sensations that you might feel, I always say the easiest thing to recognize, and this is where I've picked a couple of the techniques to teach you today, are really heaviness and lightness in the body. It's going to be tapped into the mind body connection of I feel so deeply relaxed, and then also I feel so calm and heavy. Heaviness is a wonderful tool that we can begin to tap into. When we tap into the hands or the feet, you might feel a light tingling sensation. Um, Breathing patterns, like I've mentioned, breathing becomes very shallow, like very shallow. Again, when we're talking about the hypnotic state and breath, it's very important to recognize breathing is part of our autonomic system. It happens automatically. To take control of it is a conscious response. It's a logic response. It's a response that we're going to manipulate it with our willpower. And we can. It's one of those amazing responses that you can manipulate. And so when we focus on the breath, we're actually taking ourselves away from the subconscious state. So again, don't worry about the breath unless it's a starting sequence, meaning if you just need to kick the nervous system in through a deep breath or deep breathing, do it at the beginning, not during the middle, and certainly not during the session. We really want to leave the automatic system to do the automatic work when you're in the hypnotic state because we don't want to kick in logic. So you're going to feel, you might notice a light flutter of the eyes underneath the eyelids, and that's a great recognition that you're in a light state. Maybe you'll feel your eyes roll up and inward. That's also going into the deeper states. You might feel really heavy, like you're stuck on the bed or the ground or the chair. I know that we can give the suggestions that it feels like your arms are too heavy to even lift, nor would you want to. And again, it's, oh my gosh, you can pretend, but your body and mind don't know the difference. And so, heaviness, groundedness, connection. Some people will actually feel like they're floating. And again, that's where you're beginning to differentiate. As you go into the theta states, you're going to be pulling away from the body and the mind will begin to lift up. And so, those are the deeper states when it's really just your thoughts and you're sort of unaware of your body. And that's a really beautiful state to get into. You're still very aware, you know exactly what's going on, but you're sort of in this free floating experience. There is strangely a time distortion in hypnosis. It's the same thing when you fall asleep at night. It feels like you've been asleep for 5 minutes and it's been hours. That can happen in hypnosis. Um, so again, like these emotional states, it's like things just aren't as heavy. There may be moments where things at the beginning of getting into the hypnotic state, it's not as visual for you because again, we're using a little bit more conscious mind to get the body relaxed. But once you're in the hypnotic state, you might notice that visuals just pop up and come in. And so that's a really exciting experience when you begin to like have these natural visuals that are coming. Um, you do have easier access to memories, symbols, and insights. Again, you might even have access to past lives if you give yourself that cue. And again, the more patient you can be with yourself, remember this is a practice. It is not perfect. And there are going to be days when you can do it really easily. And then there are going to be days when it's going to be a little more difficult. And you're going to find what rhythm works for you.